On this episode, we chat with a young half-Thai woman who has just relocated to Thailand after growing up in Canada.
So if you want a unique take on reverse culture shock as a stranger in a strange land you used to call home, you'll dig this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 to scout locations for a movie I'm filming called The Rest of My Life in Thailand. And so far, so good.
Yeah, you're doing a really good job, man. A thorough job.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract almost 22 years ago. Fell in love with ripping on localized or regionalized flavors of international products, so I never left.
Like what? Like potato chips or something?
Dude, any Thai flavor of an international product, like tom yum potato chips or whatever, I hate them all.
No, there's some good ones. Like,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, there's a couple of good ones. Like, there's a couple of potato chips that are like they look weird at first, but then you taste them and they're tangy or spicy. They're pretty good.
Sorry. Now, let me be clear. I love Thai food, but I don't want anything that's not Thai food to be the flavor of Thai food.
Wait, aren't you the guy that goes all over the town looking for a fake-looking hamburger? It's made of mushrooms.
No, but it tastes like hamburger. Or at least it's supposed to taste like hamburger.
All right.
Okay, we want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our ad-free regular show a day early, emails with behind-the-scenes photos of our interviews, access to our Discord server to chat with me, Greg, and other listeners around the world, and various other goodies. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and Bangkok topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about how different generations consume popular media, from The Godfather to TikTok videos, the story of a Thai TV host who got arrested for criticizing the government's new marijuana policy, and the absolutely bizarre story about a plan by the government to raise the prices at hotels nationwide, but only for tourists. To learn how to become a patron, click the support button at the top of our website.
All right, well, on this episode, Ed interviews an expat in a unique situation. Emily is a 19-year-old Canadian who was actually born in Nong Khai and spent her first 6 years of life as a look-kreung kid in northeast Thailand, only to have her parents relocate to Calgary, Canada, where she was absorbed by Canadian society like any good hoser. Now, if she's anything like me, who grew up just outside of Calgary, she spent her free time in the summer eating corn dogs and watching rednecks race horses at the Stampede, and in the winter breaking bones on a toboggan. But there's a twist. Her parents recently retired back to Nong Khai, and now Emily, wrapped in flannel and pining for a double-double from Timmy's, is plopped back down in her native Thailand, of which she only has dim childhood memories of. So we wanted to get her take on this rather unique flavor of reverse culture shock, I guess it would be. So here is Ed's interview with Canuck Thai expat native Thai, Emily.
All right, I'm here live from a Starbucks in Koh Samui, Thailand, with my new friend, Emily from Calgary. Emily, I want to thank you for coming on the Bangkok Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I happened to bump into Emily and her friend Jamie on the airplane down here, and it turns out Emily's got an interesting story, an interesting backstory. So very roughly, she was born in Thailand, but moved to Canada with her family when she was young, and recently has moved back to Thailand with her whole family and is living upcountry in the town of Nong Khai. So Emily, maybe can you just talk a little bit about your family, or maybe about maybe how your parents met and then your early life in Thailand?
Yeah, so my dad is from Canada and my mom grew up in Nong Khai. My dad was traveling through Thailand when he met her, ended up marrying her 4 months after. And the first thing that I guess the Nong Khai people told him was, this is not like, you can't mess around with her, you know, like this is, you're either in or you're out. So I think he was fully in, got married to her, and had me the next year. And yeah.
So you lived in Nong Khai then for how long when you were like a little kid?
I moved to Canada when I was 6.
Oh, okay, so you actually had 5 years as a half Thai, half Western kid, and you were in Nong Khai the whole time?
Not in Nong Khai. We moved around a lot because my dad had teaching jobs, but they were on 1-year terms. So basically we moved every year.
Oh, wild. So listeners of the podcast, we've talked about this phenomenon before, but in Thai culture, Thai people have I think it's a little bit weird, but they have a little bit of an obsession with Thai kids who are half Western. So the Thai word, which I'm sure I'll mispronounce, is look-kreung, which means half child. So you mentioned a little bit before we started. So what was it like being a little kid who is half Western?
I was basically praised my childhood in Thailand because I was half Western, I guess, and they would always call me the million baht child because of the female dowry when getting married. And I don't know, I never understood it. I was young, so I was like, yay, like that's awesome for me. I love that.
Wait, so a million baht child, so they're telling you, so you're a little kid, like 3-4 years old, and what they're basically saying is that if you stay in Thailand, get married in Thailand, presumably to a Thai guy, that the dowry will be 1 million baht because you're half Western.
Basically, that's what they've been hyping me up for as long as I can remember.
Oh my God, that is just, yeah, whatever. I mean, I'm used to this idea because I've been here so long, but it kind of never ceases to amaze me that is such a thing, because most Thai, I don't know if it's most, but many Thai movie stars and soap opera stars are look-kreung.
Yeah, a lot of the things that I would get is when they first see me, they'll be like, oh, she has a good nose. That's the one thing, that's the only thing, because they're like, oh, it's like it's taller, I guess, because I guess the nose bridge is a little bit smaller in Thai people.
Yeah, it's funny, again, weird that you brought this up, but I never understood this nose thing either. And sometimes they say the Western nose is actually scooped. Like they think our nose like curves a little bit at the end. I don't get it. But well, anyway, I mean, every culture has their own preferences. You know, in the West, where most people are white, we think it's cool to be tan and like to change your skin and look different. And so maybe the way Thai people are with liking people who look half Western, it's not that different. It's just something that makes you different or cool. It's just a little bit odd that this was a thing even when you were a kid, that they were telling you that when you were a kid. Right.
It definitely gave me like the wrong idea, because once I ended up moving to Canada, I got like a big shock, because I became from, oh, you're like the prettiest girl ever, you're like, can't wait, like all the boys will be chasing you when you're older. But then I'm 6, I move, and not a single person mentions my appearance whatsoever.
Oh wow, that's weird. Okay, I want to talk about that, but I want to talk a little bit about your childhood in Thailand. So I'm curious, in your house, was your dad speaking to you obviously then in English, but your mom was speaking to you in Thai when you were very young?
When I was very young, I was speaking only Thai, but my dad I would understand when he spoke English, but I wouldn't know how to say it back, which was odd. And now it's the opposite. I understand my mom when she speaks Thai, but I can't fully speak Thai for some reason.
Oh, okay, this is fascinating. So basically you were a native Thai speaker, but you're saying that now you've kind of lost it, at least the speaking part of it. Yeah. Okay, this is interesting. So we'll come back to the language thing. Okay, so when you're 5 or 6, your family decides to move to Canada, and so now obviously you have to basically learn to speak English.
Yeah. I was thankful that it was when I was 6, because then I mean, everyone's learning how to read then anyways. So I picked it up within probably a year, but I lost my Thai language around 10, I'd say. I don't know what happened. I just fully lost it. I just completely stopped using it, but I still heard my mom speaking Thai and I still understood it. I just I didn't use that part of my, like, I guess, muscle memory in my mouth for like this Thai language. I don't know.
Wild. So when you went back to Canada, can your mom speak English, or was she just still speaking Thai to you in Canada, and so you understood it, but you stopped speaking yourself?
Yeah. She still has a heavy accent when she speaks English, so it was definitely harder for her to learn English. She went to classes for it, which, yeah.
Okay, but she eventually picked it up. So does she pretty much like speak to you in Thai like all the time?
Oh yeah, 100%. She'll speak to me in Thai, and then a couple times I won't understand certain things, so I'll be like, oh wait, what? And then she'll try to say it in English.
Okay, this is fascinating. So it's weird because you haven't really lost like all your Thai, so you have this comprehension, but you stop speaking it, and like you said, it's interesting. I wonder if it is like a muscle thing or like a some type of mouth thing. Well, okay, so let's talk about Canada then. So you're a new kid in Canada. Now you're half Asian, so you're on the other side. And so did you feel like you were like discriminated against being like half Asian over there? Like, because you went to Calgary, is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now Greg has joked on the show about how Alberta is kind of the Texas of Canada.
Oh yeah.
I don't know much about it. Are there fewer Asian people? Let's say, obviously in Toronto there must be 1 million Asian people, right? What's Calgary like? There
was a good mix. I think it was more self-discrimination. It wasn't, well, I wouldn't say discrimination, but to me, being a kid and growing up in Thailand where being pale is like ideal, you want to be pale, and obviously I didn't care about that as much when I was younger, but I knew at the back of my mind that was like beautiful to be pale or whatever. I went to Canada and I would always compare my skin color to my classmates for some odd reason, and it just made me really insecure about being tan. And I love being tan now, but it definitely, the comparison from being a majority to a minority was hard. I kind of like, at one point growing up, I just like I was like, why don't I look like my dad, you know?
Right. So you want it to be white. You know, this stuff is so weird. And, you know, it's like in my university, I teach policy, you know, politics. I don't do culture, but I do find all these cultural issues fascinating because actually you were already a minority here, but you were like a praised minority. You were something special. But then when you go to Canada and you're a minority, now you feel like you're something weird, like you're like you feel like you're not normal or something.
Yeah, because it was from being a million baht child to I wouldn't get any comments on my appearance whatsoever. A couple times, like, kids would say, oh, she has a flat face, like, you know, like mean playground stuff. And yeah, the most common compliment, which is a backhanded compliment 100%, is, oh wow, you're the most pretty Asian I've ever seen. And I would get that all the time from, like, up to this day. I think most recently I got it last year when I was still in Canada.
Wow. Okay. I find that weird because I think in the West, you know, again, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but in the West, I think we do have a fascination with exotic looking people. Like I thought you might get like attention just being like, oh, she looks cool or something. So you feel like you never got that.
I think it depends because there'd be like a couple people. I mean, it was like weird because there'd be people that would say, oh, like, I'm into Asian girls or something. And I just didn't take that the right way. I know that they meant it with good intention, but I was just like, oh, okay.
It's a little bit weird. I've always hated that expression, yellow fever. And I know it just means like guys who are into Asians, which I guess there's really nothing wrong with that. People like what they like, but it's just a little bit weird. It makes it sound like kind of odd. Like,
why would you say, like, why would you say that off the bat? It's just like, instead of like, oh, like, you're pretty. No, it's, oh, I like Asian girls, or, oh, you're such a pretty Asian. And it was always like magnified. And I'm like, okay.
Okay, so you ended up essentially growing up in Canada. You come across to me as just like a very normal Canadian girl. So I think your time in Thailand obviously had an impact on you, but you must have gone to Canada at a young enough age that eventually you just kind of assimilated and you just became Canadian.
Yes.
But here's the fascinating thing, and I will mention that Emily is 19 years old. Your family recently decided to move back to Thailand, and now you're living up in Nong Khai. Is that right?
Yeah. We moved back in November of this year, so just over 6 months ago, I'd like to say.
Okay, this is crazy. So now you've grown up as a essentially pretty normal Canadian girl, and you find out, like, before you're getting ready to go to college, your family's going to go back to Thailand. So what was your take when your dad or your mom said, "Hey, we're moving back to Thailand"? What was your reaction?
I was excited because it was something new. We hadn't come back to visit, so I was just excited to see my mom's side of the family again, my uncle and my grandma, my grandpa from my mom's side. But it was hard because I couldn't speak to them. So it was more depressing than anything because I wanted so badly to, but it was very limited to pointing and, like hand gestures.
Well, you've only been here 6 months. I'm sure I'm sure your Thai will come back at some point. But I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed that you had such a good attitude about coming here. I think a lot of Westerners would be like, oh my God, like, I don't want to go there, or why would I go there? So it's kind of cool that you had this interest in your mom's, like, or your background as well.
Yeah, it was different because, like, when Jamie was on her way here, the person on the phone planning the trip, I guess, was like, oh, are you sure you want to go to Thailand? It's so dangerous. I'm like, no, it's not. Thailand is not dangerous.
That's funny. That reminds me of when I got ready to move here. I was doing some tutoring in my hometown, and actually was tutoring an older guy who was going back to school. And he was, believe it or not, an older guy. He was a Vietnam era veteran, for real. The guy was like in his 50s. And I told him I'm moving to Thailand, and he's like, it's not safe over there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, but why? I think I haven't really seen anything that's alarming here. So
no, I mean, we talk about it on the podcast. I think Thailand in general is way safer than the West. I mean, Calgary is probably safer than big cities in America, but big cities in America, even my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, it's not that big. It's like 1 million people, but there's dangerous neighborhoods I would never go in a million years.
Oh yeah, 100%. Me and Jamie were talking about this earlier. There's danger everywhere. It's subjective to different people's experiences. So some people could have bad experiences in Thailand. Some people could have bad experiences in Calgary. It really doesn't matter where you go. There's bad and good.
Yeah, I think that my take in Thailand, which again we've talked about on the podcast, is I think if you are white, you're more likely to be targeted by like pickpockets, like because tourists everywhere in the world tend to be subject to scams and pickpocketing. So I think as a white person here, you might be a little bit more in danger of not like getting shot. Like in East Cleveland, I'm worried about getting shot. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But here I'm more worried about, like, if I'm in a crowd, I kind of make sure my wallet's not in my back pocket. But that's about it, you know.
I think that's because of currency exchange. It's just a higher currency in Western places. So, like, if I'm going to pickpocket, I'm pickpocketing the biggest jackpot. I'm kidding.
Yeah, for sure. And they know tourists carry cash with them and stuff like that. So, okay. So next thing I want to talk about is Nong Khai, because I don't know much about it, but it's a pretty small town. But you actually said earlier that you kind of like being there, and you're not. It doesn't bother you that your family's not in Bangkok. Can you talk about being in a relatively small town?
I kind of prefer it because when we were in Bangkok for a couple days there, the streets was busy. It was kind of scary. Like there's no shot you're getting across the street unless there's a overpass. Yeah, it's just not built for me. I'm definitely not very aware of my surroundings majority of the time. I'm in my head, and like one wrong move, I'm getting hit by a car for sure.
Well, actually, that's probably the right attitude to take. I think Bangkok is dangerous. Again, we've talked about it on the show, motorbike accidents, or if you step into the street at the wrong time and you get hit by a taxi. So I'm just curious, do you feel Nong Khai is a little bit more like where you grew up? Like, do you consider yourself kind of like a small town girl?
Calgary wasn't a very small town, but it definitely, since it was, it wasn't like too small, it wasn't too big, but it was definitely like not super busy if you're not in the central. So I do consider myself a small town girl just because I just prefer Nong Khai over Bangkok because for the past 6 months, I've been hanging out with my family, walking everywhere. Like I'll walk to the shop, get a coffee in the morning, come back, hang out with my family, eat. And that's like basically the highlights of my day.
That's cool. So you're liking kind of the chilled out vibe. So your plan is, obviously I know you want to work on your Thai, but your plan is to hang out in Nong Khai for a while, but you're thinking about going to school, going to university. So since I teach at a Thai university in an international program, I'm curious about that. So you're thinking about maybe going back to Canada, but maybe studying here?
Yeah, I've looked through a couple schools in both places, and I'm still deciding. I think I'll just apply to both, see which ones I get into, and then decide then.
Well, you're welcome to apply to my program. Now, it's funny, my program, we get a lot of exchange students who come for like a year, but we've had just a few. Like I think off the top of my head, I can think of 3 or 4 students who really kind of grew up in the West and then ended up in Thailand. So we do occasionally get students like you who are really kind of Westerners and come to our program. Other than that, it's all Thais, who are in their second language. So you're not exactly sure.
Yeah, I'm still deciding. It's hard because now that my family's back here, I know Calgary better than anything, right? Like that is, I know that city for the most part, and it would make me feel a lot more comfortable, I guess, to go to school there just for like transit and, living in people. I have so many roots there, friends. But here, now that my family's here, it's going to be hard leaving. But regardless of which school I go to, I would have to leave them anyways to go to Bangkok, and they're staying in the north of Thailand. So,
well, it sounds like you're in just this family phase of your life, which is pretty cool. So I'm just curious, have you, so now you're back here, and you're look-kreung again. You're like the million baht kid or whatever. So I wonder if up in Nong Khai, have you actually been able to meet any people? Like, have you made friends up there, like Thai friends yet?
I've actually been very antisocial since being here. I don't know why, but I think just not knowing how to speak Thai is, I just feel like I can't get my point across, and it's really frustrating. So instead of trying, I've just been hiding with my family. I haven't really put myself out there to meet anyone, but for the most part, people have been saying, "Oh, wait till she gets to Bangkok," or "Oh, she needs to apply to modeling and all this." And you'd think that it would make you feel better, but I feel like I'm looking at myself now and I'm like, am I supposed to see someone different? Because like growing up in Calgary, I haven't really thought much about my appearance whatsoever. I just don't think that's my number one trait. I think I have better traits to offer. So now that being here and only my appearance is talked about, I keep looking at myself. I'm like, I don't see it. I just don't see it.
Well, it is a weird aspect of Thai culture. And again, we have to keep in mind that you've only been here 6 months. So yeah, so like chilling with your family, that's a sensible thing to do. So the other thing I want to ask you is, have you, since you lived kind of a Canadian life, like in Canada, is there anything about Thailand or Nong Khai or Thai culture that has really shocked or surprised you? I mean, I'm sure you learned some stuff from your mom when you were a kid, but like, is there just anything weird that you've encountered since you've been in Thailand that surprised you?
I actually in Nong Khai live right beside a temple, which is super cool. 3 a.m, like randomly, there might be a schedule, I don't know, but randomly at 3 a.m, I'll hear them banging on the big drums, and I'll be like, what? Like, is there like a moon thing? I think my dad said something about a moon phase. I have no idea, but I want to look into definitely Buddhism, just because it's so accepting. I like that concept. My dad said it's like his favorite religion from all the ones he's looked into. And yeah, that is really cool. I love the big Buddhas. I love the art in Thailand. I think people are just so kind here. Very respectful, saying, bowing, saying "Swadee ka" as a respect to your older. You'll always call, like, even if you're friends with them, they're older, Pete. Like stuff like that, I think is cool.
I think it's great that you're getting this education now in Thai culture and being half Thai. It's just fascinating. You've just had like an interesting life where you kind of started your life here and then switched, and now you're back. So I don't know. It's just my take. I hope you stay in Thailand. So I wish you luck, and I hope you find a university, maybe my university in Thailand. I think that'd be great.
I think I definitely have to come visit you in the American Studies.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Anytime you're down in Bangkok, for sure, on the Bangkok podcast, you are welcome. Jamie's welcome. Maybe in the future you can come back on the show, because I think after a year or two, I'm guessing you're going to pick up Thai pretty quickly, just because it's got to come back to you from being a kid. And so once you can speak Thai, it might change your experience here.
It definitely will. I definitely think I'm picking it up faster than if I were to learn it from scratch. Yeah, no, I feel like my personality is my favorite trait personally. So not being able to communicate kind of defeats that purpose at all. And once I'm able to speak Thai, I think I'm going to be able to build relationships and friendships and be able to have a better time here. Like communication is definitely key to everyday life.
Well, I know when I met Emily and Jamie on the plane, they actually had not heard of the Bangkok podcast, which is a crime. But so they don't know that on the podcast, Greg and I are pretty much always lamenting how bad our Thai is. So it's like both Greg and I have this goal of we must learn to speak Thai, because I think once we cross that line, it'll just open up the country in new ways. And for two guys who've been here so long, we haven't done everything there is to do, but we've kind of been there, done that. So it's like the last challenge for us. But I have a feeling you're going to get there before we do.
Well, you guys got that. I believe in you guys. And yeah, I think I'm on more of like there's more pressure for me, just because since I look Thai, everyone speaks Thai to me, just expecting me to already know Thai. And when I don't, and I reply with, "Oh, put Thaiไม่ได้," blank faces, no response, just, wow, come on, girl, pick it up type of situation.
All right, well, I'm sure that's going to happen. So maybe in a year or two, you can come back and be on the podcast again. So I just want to thank you very much, and you're welcome to come back on the show.
Yeah, I'll be back with maple syrup. I got you and Greg. And yeah, hopefully I'm fluent by then.
Yeah, you can make fun of us in Thai.
Yeah, you guys won't understand, but I'll be doing that.
All right, thank you very much.
อันนี้70แล้วค่ะอันนี้40ค่ะอ๋อเล็กเนาะ
You know, I really enjoyed meeting Emily and her friend Jamie. I happened to just bump into them on the plane down to Samui, and I heard, you know, Emily has this totally unique story. Her friend Jamie was new to Thailand, and we ended up meeting a few days later. Ended up doing this interview, but her story is just so odd in that. You know, you and I have talked about the look-kreung thing before, but I've never met someone like her who spent years here and then was relocated back west. And essentially, when you meet her or talk to her, she comes across as just 100% Canadian.
Right. Okay.
You know, just you can tell in the interview she's just a completely normal Westerner,
friendly, attractive, smells great, the usual Canadian.
Right. But then now she's back here in Thailand and she has this unique background.
Yeah.
You know, after we were done recording, we kept chatting and she told me this crazy story of how she was actually born with blue eyes and that her dad made a big deal out of the fact that she was the only person born with blue eyes ever in a hospital in Nong Khai.
Yeah.
It's just I'm not sure that's possible, man. I'm not sure people can be born with one color eyes and have it change.
Well, dude, I thought that was super interesting because that's exactly what happened to my son when he was born.
For real?
Yeah. My son is look-kreung, obviously. My wife is Thai. And when he was born, he had the craziest sort of blue-gray, steel-colored eyes.
For real?
Yeah, yeah. And then when he was
I did not know that. I did not know this.
Yeah, yeah. I'll put a little picture of my son up there for when he was a baby for our patrons. But yeah, we were looking at like his mom and me were like, oh my God, if he keeps this color's eyes, he's going to be like a superstar, like an Asian looking kid with like steel gray eyes. But I forget how old he was, about 6 months old or something, and they just eventually just turned back to brown.
Oh, wow. I guess it's for real. You know, when she told the story, and I think even she said to me, I can't remember if it was on the interview or if we talked about it. I think she even said she wasn't sure if she believed it, but I guess it is possible. I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah, I had no idea. And I was like, what's going on here? I mean, I've heard of heterochromia before, right? Where you get two different colored eyes, but I've never heard of eyes changing color so drastically, but it must be quite common.
You know, what I found most fascinating about her story is the weird way that being multiracial in different places can change your status, at least among some people. So she's a little kid in Nong Khai and people are calling her the Million Baht kid, treating her like she's some like unbelievable gem. And then at least according to her, she said in Calgary, she wasn't anything special and was even to some extent maybe even discriminated against for not being 100% white. So it's almost like, you know, at least from her perspective, she felt in junior high or high school, she was less than normal or that she was in a way maybe even looked down upon. I mean, what's your take on that? Do you feel like where you grew up, were there many Asian Canadians, or what was it like?
Well, I mean, Calgary was the big city for me. I grew up in a little town south of Calgary called Okotoks, which when I moved there had 6,000 people. Now it's up near around 30, I think. But no, there was one person who wasn't obviously white in my friend group, and that was my friend Nikki, whose dad was Indian. Her mom was white, but other than that, like, just redneck central, white all around, white.
Okay, so maybe it makes sense. Like she really kind of felt. I mean, again, she explains it in the interview herself. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she definitely felt different, like going from being special in a good way to maybe even being special in a bad way.
Interesting. Well, man,
but then now coming back here, but now back here, she gets whatever bonus there is. For being half white, she's now back into like bonus territory.
Yeah, it's good, man. 19 years old. She's going to have a really, really interesting year ahead of her when she moves back. Because at 19 years old, you're still on that time of your life where you're really like developing and becoming you, and you're having these you're making these core memories, you know. So man, right. she's going to have a really interesting story when she's older. And maybe we can check in with her.
Well, I'm curious. You know, her whole language situation is fascinating. Like she said in the interview, she actually spoke Thai until she was 10 and then stopped speaking it in Canada. And then now, like she said in the interview, she basically can't speak Thai, which seems hard to believe, but it's basically true. So, I mean, what do you think? I got to expect that she's going to be able to relearn or remember Thai. She's got to be able to do that.
Man, I don't know. I mean, if the amount of Thai that I've forgotten in the past 2 years after not using it regularly in my lessons is any indication, then I can believe it. But I mean, you when you're a baby, you just suck up languages like a sponge, and I got to think they're stored deep in your lizard brain somewhere. It's just a matter of unlocking them.
I hope so. So your son is obviously fluent in Thai and fluent in English for his age.
Go that far. He's pretty good in Thai, but Thai, let's just say Thai's not his best subject in school.
Okay, but I mean, he speaks Thai with your wife, and he's actually studying Thai in school. Mm-hmm. So I mean, his Thai ability dwarfs yours.
Yes,
is that not true?
That is true, although that's not saying much, but still.
So, but I wonder if he was suddenly relocated, like if you moved back to Canada and just restarted your life over there, I wonder if he would just lose that.
I don't know. I have to think that it's like those language skills are stored deep down, but it's just learning how to access them again. That just makes sense to me, but I really have no experience with it.
Well, I want to thank Emily for coming on the show and letting me interview her, considering we had just met. And I think she's someone we need to check back in and maybe. So I think she said that she's been in country for about 6 months. So maybe in about another 6 months, she'll be here for a year. It'd be interesting to check back in with her and see if she's kind of remembered or relearned her spoken Thai.
Right, and get her thoughts on reverse culture shock and being special.
Yeah, whatever you call it.
Again.
It's like it is kind of a reverse culture shock.
Yeah. So thanks, Emily. That was cool that you met her, and thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to learn to live with no matter how we feel about it. Now, last time Ed asked me what I thought about fans blowing on your table during a meal, so this week it's my turn. Right, I got a pretty straightforward one for you. What is your take on when you're out at a mall somewhere, walking around, shopping, spending some money, and you see someone pushing a stroller, and you peek to look at the baby inside, but it's not a baby, it's a dog?
Yeah, dude. To be honest, I haven't seen it that much, but I'm not down with it. I don't like it. I don't like the like infantilization of dogs.
Oh, yeah, okay.
and treating dogs like human beings. I love dogs, but they're not human beings.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we're on the same boat with this. I loathe this. I think I'm so tired of seeing people carrying their dogs everywhere with like these like emaciated limbs because they're never allowed to walk anywhere.
Yeah, or like dressed up in clothing and all that kind of stuff. I don't like it.
I don't like it. And I'm sorry, listeners, if one of you has a dog and you like to push him around in a stroller and put him in a cute little dress or whatever,
let a dog be a dog. That's what I say. Let a dog be a dog.
Yeah. And also, I don't like it when people call themselves, call dogs fur babies. No, they're animals. It's your pet.
But you're kind of right that there is something in Thai culture where, for one thing, they love dogs and they love pets, which is fantastic. But I think maybe they do. Do you think they really do it more than in the West? It's a good question, because people in the West, there are the same people in the West who do the little outfits and
yeah.
But I think I don't remember.
But they're parodied though. Those people are made fun of.
I don't remember seeing dog strollers back home. I don't remember that.
I think we're getting into dangerous territory where we're comparing something in Thailand to something back home where we haven't been for 20 years. So who knows? Maybe it's super common now in the West. But
all I can say is I would equally loathe it, whether it's in Thailand or back home. I'm an equal opportunity loather.
Yeah, same. Let your dogs be dogs. If you want something you can carry, get a snake. They don't have any legs.
All right, a final thanks to our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online or Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Yeah, baby. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can send us a voicemail through our website that we'll feature on the show, or even reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, everyone. Take it easy out there, and we'll see you back here next week.
For sure. Wait, this is completely random and somewhat embarrassing. I saw this TikTok video, and it was a girl talking about the joke, why did a chicken cross the road?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the answer? Why did the chicken cross the road?
Get to the other side.
Okay, in the TikTok video, she's saying, I just realized to get to the other side means dying. She's like, I thought it was just a deadpan answer. And I did too.
Oh,
like,
I never thought, yeah.
Right. Oh, you too. Oh, cool. Thank
Yeah.
you. No, she's like, wait, there's a double meaning. To get to the other side means the chicken might get hit by a car.
I think that's giving that joke too much credit.
Okay, now you make me feel better.
No.
Because in the TikTok video, she's like, oh my God, I never realized there was this double meaning. And then I'm watching her video and I'm like, holy shit, to get to the other side.
I never thought about it like that.
Okay, thank you.
But that's
fine.
stupid because there's
I
like,
feel
just because
so
the
much
chicken
better.
crosses. I mean, lots of chickens cross roads successfully. There's no like guarantee that.
But maybe they're trying to get hit. But why did the chicken cross the road to get hit by a car? Okay, so actually, you make me feel so much better.
I think that's reading too much into a grade 2 joke.
Okay, that's great. Okay, I don't feel so stupid
so
because I mean, I wasn't embarrassed enough about it that I wasn't going to mention it to someone, but I was like, oh shit, I never realized that.